So,
Hi, thanks for coming out tonight. For our information session this evening, as part of Parents as Partners, many of you know that we are going to be virtually streaming this evening. So we have Mr. McCrory here with us, and we would ask that if you are watching us from afar, that you go ahead and click in the chat box and just let us know that you are watching us. And if you would kindly write your name in there and also the name of your student who attends Clark. And we thank you so much for being here this evening. For tonight, as always, we've got our agenda, and with this, we're going to go over some of the current events at school, some of the upcoming events, and then I will turn it over to our guest speaker, Andrea Olson, Officer Andrea Olson from the Sheriff's Office, who you'll meet in just a little bit. Want to, as always, say thank you to our parents and our families for all that you continue to give to Clark. We were so appreciative of the holiday dinner that you provided for us. You allowed us to go out to a nice restaurant and kind of kick back and enjoy our time just before the winter holiday. And we also were very appreciative of the gift cards and lots of other treats that came in just before the winter break. The application period, as many of you know, is open now. It opened in November, and it's going through February 28th this year. So if you happen to know any family members, neighbors, business associates, and you know that Clark would be a great fit for them, we would encourage you to let them know about the application period, where they can go online and they can apply to attend Clark in the coming school year, and also the info sessions that are coming up. So those info sessions are Tuesday and Wednesday, January 29th and January 30th. There are cards that were sent out by the district, including a corrected card that would be received by every 9th grader within Martin County Schools. And 8th graders also received the correct card right off the bat with the dates of January 29th and January 30th. We also have copies of the postcard right here at Clark. So if you need any of those for students who you know, please just give me a call or send me an email, and I'm happy to send those home with your children. For surveys, I want everybody to recognize that we're approaching February, and by every February, we like to get the input and suggestions from our students and from our parents. So you will be seeing, probably within the next 2 weeks, survey links coming out, and those would be getting just 10 questions, hopefully take you no more than 5 minutes in order to give us some feedback about the school, the teachers, the administration, and suggestions that you may have for any improvements, along with any affirmations you might want to share with us so that we can continue to recognize our faculty and staff members who go above and beyond. Academic reinforcement, we continue to have our academic alerts, and they are every 2 weeks, where teachers are asked to have the grades updated in focus, and Mr. McCrory is able to pull a report. And if students are achieving 73% or below in any course, the teacher is asked to reach out, make that connection with parents so there's that awareness, but also to come up with an action plan with the students. So when you see those alerts, we would ask that you also have conversations with your son or daughter in order to see how can we get them back on track. For our future session, we already know for the month of February, we're going to have Beyond High School, College Programs and Financial Aid. And that will be having guest speakers from my colleagues at Indian River State College. So we hope that there will be quite a bit of attendance on February 21st. When we have 2 speakers from the college coming to join us. As we think about some volunteering opportunities, we always have the Clark Stars recognition. We had the crane given out just this past Wednesday, just yesterday afternoon in fact, where Dr. Denisha Bonds received a crane as recognition of all the fine work that she did with the National Career Month for career development. And we also had the crane delivered to our trio of facilities gentlemen who make our building and our lawn and everything around Clark and inside Clark just a wonderful, wonderful place to be working and for our students to be educated. So we thank you, parents as partners, because we are able to provide for the people who are recognized not only the traveling crane, a little statue that moves from area to area, classroom to classroom, office to office, but also a gift card, so that those people are recognized on behalf of you all, thank you parents, with a little token of your appreciation. So thank you for that. We also want to let you know an upcoming event in May is the Ice Cream Social. So many of you probably attended that when your son or daughter was first starting here at Clark. And you'll notice that the date, once you start checking our calendars, that's already on the calendar for May 7th. May 7th will be that date for our Ice Cream Social. If you're not familiar with the Ice Cream Social, that's when this room is transformed into multiple tables so that we have representation from all 15 or so clubs that we have here at Clark. So the students and their families, our new students, are asked to come in and rotate around and visit each of those particular club tables and see what's going to speak to them. So we have wonderful attendance as far as our new students wanting to see what's available to them, but we also have to fight off our original students because they just want to sell their club to the students who are here. And it's really a great way to be able to answer questions for the incoming students. And that's why we invite parents also to volunteer to be part of that, so that we can say, hey, we've got some parents here. So it's not just about talking to Clark personnel, but you can hear what questions you may have, that real story from real parents and real students on that evening. Kathy, anything else you would like to share?
The prom committee needs, they need gifts and gift cards for baskets that they're going to raffle off for a fundraiser for their fashion show. And also they're looking for sponsors, high-dollar sponsors for, what is it? I don't have that.
We have sponsors still needed for prom for music, and that's $700 or any portion of $700. Also, food and beverage sponsor is being sought, and that's $1,500. And we also have multiple decoration sponsors. So if you'd be interested in making a donation, or if you know a business that would be interested in a donation of $100, we're taking those as well. And Mrs. Bartow, along with Ms. Jones, are our contact for prom committee. And as Kathy had talked about, because of the fashion show coming up as a fundraiser for prom on March 1st, the prom committee is looking for gift cards, and they're looking for gifts so that they can create raffle baskets for that evening. And that's always a fun evening to come on out and see our kids strutting their stuff and showing some of the different prom attire that's in for the coming school year.
Any specifics on the gift cards, the amounts of places?
Any gift card would probably do. And what they do is they put together, the prom committee actually puts together gift baskets of all different values, and then there are different chances that they're taking in order to win those prizes by the end of that evening. I also was asked by Mrs. Gribble and Mr. Escandone to remind everybody, senior parents, if you have not yet and you are interested in senior ads, you must have that in by the 25th of January. So we've got 2 parents of seniors seated here right now, and we want to remind you by the end of next week, right? Already that's the 25th of January.
That's Friday.
You want to make sure that you have submitted that. And you will see a flyer go out in the Friday newsletter, and of course at any time you can contact Mr. Escandone or Mrs. Gribble directly for that information. From the parents who are here in person, are there any questions, comments, concerns that you'd like to share for the good of the group before we go to our guest speaker?
Question.
Yes, question.
I'm sorry, I'm new, so I have a question. Volunteer, who do you check with out here to make sure you sign up for I'm not sure if I signed up this year or not.
We have volunteer co-coordinators. Kathy is seated right here with us, so Kathy can take that information, and also Katie Carroll can have that information. So we'll be sure, Mrs. Lewis, to make sure that we get with you. Thank you for that. Anyone else have anything before we move on? Well, I am very pleased to introduce to you this evening Officer Andrea Olson. And Andrea is joining us from the Martin County Sheriff's Office. And she is actually a resource officer for 9 schools. And she does support Clark with that. So we're very thrilled that she was able to come out this evening. And I'm going to turn the presentation over to Andrea.
I already told them that I'm not a big fan of microphones, so you guys can all hear me just fine, right? Are you picking me up okay for people at home?
I'll let you know, just
Okay.
keep going.
All right. If not, I can speak louder. So my name is Andrea Olson. I'm a deputy with the Martin County Sheriff's Office, as she's already explained to you. School resource officer. Clark is one of the schools that fall under my umbrella. So if she has any issues and needs law enforcement advice or help or what have you, she knows how to directly contact me to communicate and handle any situations that might come up. No, nothing has come up thus far this school year, so we're good there. Okay. There's a couple things, do that, right? Okay. There's a couple things that I was asked to speak about tonight. I turned that off just for now because we're not on that topic just yet. So rather than you all looking up there wondering when I'm getting to that. 2 things I was asked to speak about tonight. One thing was going to be internet safety and issues with internet. And another thing I was asked to speak about is something that I'm sure everyone's been on everyone's mind lately is the vaping issue. So I'm going to do the vaping last. You know, got to save the meat and potatoes for the end, right? It's how the newscasters do it. Got to wait till the end for that story you want. So first we'll talk about internet safety and just some stuff to be mindful about and to consider when you either allow your children to start navigating out into that world, or you guys are mostly high school and college level though, so they've already been out in that world, right? Usually it's like middle school now that they start giving them phones now. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so who in here lets their children have a smartphone? Okay. Who lets their child have a smart device, whether it be an iPad, a tablet, something along those lines? Okay. How many of you have a smart TV? Okay. How many of you have a gaming system at home that accesses the internet, where they can communicate with people online and talk to them? No? What kind of gaming system do you guys have?
Me?
Or you don't have a gaming system?
No.
Oh, okay.
They fish.
Oh, they fish.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
I got
But you have the
them
other
on-
two,
I got them
so
on
it still
the
applies to you.
website.
All right. How many of you would be comfortable letting your own student have a computer in their room with a webcam? No? Nobody?
Well, they do, because it's on.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Raise your hand if you'd be comfortable
Yes, they
letting your student have a computer with a webcam in their room. Nobody. Yeah, I wouldn't feel comfortable either. How many of you allow them to keep their phones and their tablets in their rooms with them? So none of you feel comfortable letting them have a computer in their room with a camera, but yet you do.
Yes, the camera.
Because, in essence, what's a smartphone? It's a pocket-sized computer with a webcam, access to the internet, and a whole slew of other things. Your phone or your smart device can literally do just about anything you want it to do now with all the apps that they have out there, right? I mean, if you're a golfer, you can download some app that finds your golf ball for you. So it literally does just about anything and everything for you now, to include your camera, videos. It even hides things that they don't want you to see. So they have apps out there for everything. So when you think that your student's using their calculator on their phone to compute problems and equations for their math homework. Well, there's actually apps out there that look like a calculator, and it functions just like so. So to you, they're just using a calculator, and you can punch in the numbers, and it'll compute whatever problem you're putting in there. But when they put in whatever code they chose for that specific app, it opens up like a vault, and they can hide things in there from, whoever they don't want seeing it, usually parents. So just things to be aware of. I'm not saying every single, kid is doing it, but they're out there, right? You know about some of the apps I'm talking about, right? Yep, see? We have a student in here, but I won't let you see because we'll protect their identity. Okay. Excuse me. So there's a lot of apps out there to be mindful of. If you're not already doing it, we strongly encourage you to monitor your students and your children's devices. And that's not just saying every once in a while you take it from them and you scan it real quick and okay, it looks all good and you hand it back. There's actually programs out there where you guys can monitor literally every single thing that they do on their device. And it can be as simple or as extravagant as you want it to be. You can get the programs, and the ones that are more extravagant, you have to pay a little bit more for. I don't have any specific ones for you because I'm not here to promote anything, but just Google them and they'll pop up for you. There's ones out there that you can monitor almost just about every keystroke that they do. And then there's one simple to where they literally just tell you text messages that they send to their friends, ones that they receive in, and just, the more basic stuff that they're doing on their phones. And that way you can monitor their activity. There's also parental controls that you can put on the devices. Were you aware of that? Some yes, some no maybe. There's parental controls that you can put on there to where your children cannot add an app or delete an app without you punching in your own parental code of whatever it is that you chose. So I would strongly suggest that anybody who has smart devices to put those on your kids' phones so that when they want to go download that sneaky app that's going to hide some things that they maybe don't want you to see, they can't download it until you approve it. And so before you go approving any apps, it's strongly suggested that you look at the app or what it's called, you pull it up in the App Store, and you read, what it's supposed to do. And then, because usually it'll say, hide, store your files, store photos, and then you see it's not actually a calculator. That's not the only one that they use now. There's a bunch out there. But that's the most common one because it's, just looks like a calculator to you guys. Excuse me. So that being said, who allows their children to go on social media? Just about everybody, right? So just something to be aware of. A lot of students are making 2 or more profiles, if you will. So just to be mindful of that, they're making the one for you guys, for the parents, and then they're making the ones for their friends and all, everybody else that they're associated with or all the people that they meet online. Just, something that we harp with the kids anytime I do a presentation at my schools is, I stress to all of them the importance of not friending people online just because they look like maybe they're your own age and, or they're from where you're from, because we all know that not everybody on the internet is who they say they are. And so we actually have presentations that we do, mostly geared towards middle school, but it can be middle school, up through high school if it needed to be. But just, letting them know about all the dangers and stuff on social media and that these things actually happen. And we actually have videos that we show them of actual events that have occurred to real kids their age. And it really, to watch the kids see the video, and you can just see on the faces which students are kind of doing some things maybe they shouldn't be doing online, and you just visually watch the reality hitting their face, and it's actually amazing to see that. Does anybody have any questions as far as internet safety stuff? I know everybody's kind of more getting ready for the vaping stuff, right?
If you have the FDA approved drugs,
I'm sorry?
if you have FDA approved drugs, Is there no governing board for the internet?
Well, so typically, like for the internet stuff,
Yes.
right? The websites put on there that you have to be 13 or older to access it. And it's like the honor system, right? There's no verification process to really determine if someone's actually 13 or older to use it. I mean, we were all kids once, right? AOL came out, well, I don't know. But, you know, when websites like that come out, everybody knows how to do simple math, right? Every kid can figure out what year they have to be born to be 13, you know, so that's what's out there. So no, not to answer your question, really, no, there's not. But I mean, there are law enforcement agencies that are doing their best to monitor activities and to catch predators. Is that kind of more what you were asking? Yes, okay. So it gets tricky to be able to get every single one of them that's out there, because, I mean, a lot of times we only can skate the surface, right, of the ones that are out there, and we don't know about it unless it's brought to our attention. Kind of like out in the community, when a neighbor sees something that doesn't quite look right in their neighborhood. I mean, we're out there and we're patrolling, but we can't be in literally every single street and corner of Martin County at one time. So we can't see everything that's going on as much as we'd like to be able to. So we rely on the community, on you all, to call us and say, hey, this is what's going on, it doesn't seem right, it doesn't feel right. And so we come out and we look at it. So, you know, if you all see something on your kid's social media and it's not adding up or it's not looking right, give us a call, you know, and we'll be more than happy to look into it and see where it takes us. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Just curious, what happens if a threat is seen on social media?
Okay. So as far as threats are concerned, for social media, there is a zero tolerance policy, and it's also in the statute to where it's a felony. And I believe it's a second-degree felony because it's a written threat. So anytime there's a written threat to do any kind of harm to any other person, it used to just be if, you know, if there was a written threat to do harm to a person and they see it or what have you, it's a second-degree felony. But now they've included any type of threat to include terrorist acts, and it just has to be written so that someone can see it. So if a student's sitting in a classroom, say, and they type it on their computer screen, but they don't send it to anybody, and it's not on social media, it's not anywhere, but they write some kind of a threat on their computer screen, and they know that other students in the room can see that screen, once it's reported to us, that's a second-degree felony right there.
And it doesn't matter how old they are?
It doesn't matter how old they are, but typically elementary school students, we don't have those issues with. It's the middle school to high schoolers that we're seeing those issues with. I can't think of one case with a younger student. And typically, I mean, if it's a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old that's saying something or doing something, usually it's because they're repeating something that they heard someone else say. We're not gonna, you know, necessarily just go take a kindergartner, drag them out, you know. We're gonna educate them because they're so young, you know, so we're not heartless, we're not gonna, but the young ones, when they do something like that, we're gonna sit them down, we talk with them, we let them know that it's not okay. And, you know, it's more of the older they get, especially middle school to high school, is when you start seeing all that. Does that answer your question? Okay. Does that answer your question as well? Okay, just making sure. How are we doing on time? Okay. So there's all that. We touched on the threats. I think that's just about everything for the social media and internet. I mean, sky's the limit. You can talk about it all night, really. If at any point you're not sure if your child is doing appropriate things or not, take their device and start going through it, you know? And if you're not sure what an app is, look it up or put it in the App Store and see what it says it does, you know, if it doesn't look familiar to you and you're not sure. Or if you want to start from scratch, go through their phone and start deleting stuff, and then put in those parental controls we talked about, you know? A lot of people get into the whole modern mindset of, well, my kid has to have a phone. Well, enough, you know, I get it because kind of payphones have gone by the wayside and they're not in every school like they used to be, right? You guys know what I'm talking about? You used to just bring your quarters to school with you in case you had to make a phone call.
Yep.
Dimes. I used to bring dimes.
Oh, okay, well, you outdated me. I brought quarters. But, so the payphones are non-existent anymore. And so, I get it, I understand the concept of wanting your kid to have access to communication in case they need it. But what says they have to have a smartphone? You know, or internet, or a camera. You know, there's still flip phones out there and people forget that, I think. So I know personally if my kids ever get to the age where I'm okay with them having a phone, it's gonna be one of those old school ones with no internet, where you have to do the click 3-5 times to get their capital letter, you know what I mean? So the texting's nice and slow, and if they do take a picture, the pixels are so bad you can't even tell what it's a picture of, right? Yeah, we're gonna go old school if they ever get a phone. So, that being said, we'll go on to the, what everybody wants to talk about. So everybody says vaping, right? What it's actually called is electronic nicotine delivery system. You want to get technical, you want to get official with it. That's what it's called. But other names that it goes by, ENDS obviously is the acronym for it, right? Electronic nicotine dispensing system. E-cigarettes, you guys have all heard of e-cigarettes. That's kind of what they were called when they first came out. But they have lots of names: e-cigs, e-hookah, vape sticks, vape pens. Dab pens and CBD dab or wax pens are a little bit different in the sense that their main purpose is for aerosolizing the cannabis, so marijuana. That's the main difference. Yeah, that's their main purpose. So when you hear somebody say, oh, you know, so-and-so said they had a dab pen at school today, that's a dab pen, and that's its main function. The other ones that don't have the asterisks, those are the ones that are mainly used for the nicotine. Or, you know, some kids get the pods that don't have nicotine just because they have the flavoring and they want to seem like they're doing, I don't know. I don't get it. Okay. So basically what it is they're products that deliver nicotine, through a liquid consisting of glycerin and or propylene glycol. Yeah, yummy, right? They add a whole bunch of flavors to them to make it taste good because, you can imagine those probably don't taste good by themselves. The basic components typically are a cartridge containing a nicotine solution, a heating element which aerosolizes the solution. So it's not a vapor, which I know that a lot of the advertisements tell you that it turns into a vapor. No, it turns into more of an aerosol consistency, which is basically either solid or liquid particles going into the air, right? Everybody knows what the spray cans do. That's basically what it's doing. And it also contains the power source for heating the solution. It's typically the rechargeable lithium batteries. So you add all the chemicals that are in it to include nicotine, which is in cigarettes, which is that very addictive component, right? So you have your addictive component right there. You still have some of the same chemicals in the, whatever you want to call them, e-cigs, vapes, that are in actual cigarettes themselves. And now you're adding a component of whatever reaction the battery is adding to what you're inhaling as well. So they're still so new to the point where we don't have any studies showing long-term effects. We can only go off of some of the short-term effects that we've been seeing and that people are having studies on. But otherwise, it's basically the new cigarette market is what it is. There was a study that I came upon where in 2011, it showed that advertisements they were spending approximately $6.8 million in advertising for these devices. The following year in 2012, they were spending over $18 million in advertising for them. The year after that, in just 2013, they were spending over $80 million for advertising. So it's basically just replaced cigarettes. So cigarettes are over there now, nobody really cares about that. So now it's the vaping, and that's what they're spending money on advertising and pushing out there. So all the little tactics that the cigarette companies were using and tobacco companies were using to advertise their products, whether, you know, the sexual innuendo stuff, using celebrities, putting them in films and shows and whatnot, that's what they're using and doing for the vapes as well. So all those tactics that they use for cigarettes, that's what they're doing with these devices now to be able to sell them. And even though they say that they're not marketing them towards children, I'll let you kind of decide what you think based on the fact of all the flavors. I think there's over 7,000 or 8,000 different flavors out there now, to range everything from cotton candy to mango and what was the other? Watermelon or whatever. I mean, what adult is going to go buy cotton candy flavored? I mean, maybe, but you know. Excuse me. And then just the different types of devices that they're actually selling. And I'm going to show you some examples of them. I think we can all pretty much agree that a lot of adults aren't really going to buy some of these devices that I'm going to show you because, well, I mean, I'll let you make up your mind about that. But just because we only have so much time for this meeting, if you guys want any more information yourselves to go and look at some of the research that's already been done, you can go to www.catchinfo.org. That's an organization that does a lot of different kinds of studies. Obviously, you have to go to one of their search things, and there's a drop-down screen where you can find the e-cigarette information. And there's a whole bunch of information on there as far as different things that it does. All right, so the pictures. Everybody wants the pictures, right? This is kind of a breakdown of the different components that go into a typical one of these devices. The majority of them, some of the volumes for this specific one is 0.8 milliliters. All of them have a battery. Most of the ones that look like pens, like this looks like a pen, they have a button on them. So that's one way to tell if it's a pen or a vape. There's usually some type of thing that looks like it might be a button. I don't know if it's an atomizer, I think it's an atomizer, that's how you say it. But there's like a little window-looking thing on the devices, and that's something for you all to look out for if you're trying to tell if someone has one of these devices or not. And then you have the cap, which the caps all look different depending on the style of the vape. So this one's made to look like a pen, so it's going to look like a pen cap. You have your mouthpiece, so once you take off the cap, it's a mouthpiece underneath and not an actual, like the ink tube for a pen. So you'd have to just kind of pull on it to see what comes out, whether it's going to be a mouthpiece or an actual pen inside there. They have the atomizer tube, the coil head, and the atomizer base. Keep in mind, a lot of these ones that they make to look like pens will actually function as a pen. So your students might be sitting there in their classroom, or your kids might be sitting there doing their homework, and they're actually using their vape pen to do it with. So that's why you have to look for those really subtle things, like the little window looking thing or the button that's on there. Or if you end up seeing them like chewing on the back of their pen that doesn't look like a normal like Bic pen, you know, like a typical pen you know it comes from a store. If it's a pen you've never really seen before and you see them in the back of your classroom or, you know, somewhere else chewing on pens all the time, that might be a sign that you might want to look at that pen a little more closely. So some of them, a lot of people think that it's mostly the Juul style that everyone's familiar with, so the long sort of USB. As you can see on the top left, there's ones that are smaller and they even say USB on them, so they just look like a USB to you. On the bottom left, that's just a different style. Bottom right, there's one that looks almost like a Zippo style lighter, and that's actually a vape device. Yes?
Where are these manufactured?
Just different companies who are making them.
Here in the United States, or are they
Mhm.
coming?
Yep.
Yeah?
I mean, the devices themselves aren't
Yeah.
illegal. They're only illegal for minors to have and possess. And so, if you're not 18, so you're 17 and younger, just by having one of these, whether it has nicotine in it or not, it is considered a nicotine dispensing device, and we cite them for that.
So adults use those pens?
I don't know that an adult, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
The whole marketing thing?
Yeah.
What adult is gonna, who cares if an adult wants to hide? No adult
Right.
cares about the pen thing.
Right.
The adults usually have the more sophisticated ones that actually look like the more original, vaping devices that they came out with that look like what they're supposed to be and not these gadgets. So I mean, you decide for yourself if you think they're geared towards kids or
Yeah.
adults. There's ones that look like this. It's, who knows what you think that looks like. Maybe to you it looks like a mascara thing, or maybe it looks like lip gloss, or, not lip gloss, lipstick, right? So, other things to be mindful of. So if, you've never seen it before, you don't know what it is, just pick it up and start pulling on stuff and messing with it and see what's inside, I don't think any students are going to be using this because that's kind of an obvious one, but just to show you that they come in all different shapes and sizes. This one, an actual one that looks like a pen, it functions just like a pen, and they took the cap off so that you could see on the end. You see the mouthpiece? Okay. More ones that look like pens.
Nice.
Right?
Nice.
All different styles. They look just like a nice pen that you'd get somewhere and nobody would think any different. But if you look, do you see, there's a laser pointer you said, right? You see right over here?
Yeah.
That would be like that button we're talking about.
What's
You know
this?
what I mean?
And the
So-
plastic on the bottom is what?
that's just a reflection, I think.
Oh, okay.
See? So don't pay attention to that, that's just a reflection. So when you see these things, start pulling on stuff and seeing what's underneath. They have mini pens, and some of them you refill, see the bottle up there? Depending on the style you get, some of them have those bottles where you refill them with the liquid, and other ones have actual pods that it comes and it's pre-packaged, so to say. So the pods are disposable and they stick them in, and they're good to go, or they take them out and they throw them away when they're done. And I'll show you some of those as well. More examples of the pen style ones, all different colors and shapes and sizes, and you can pretty much get just about any kind that you want. You can get ones that at first glance, what does that look like to everybody?
Thermometer?
Okay, so either a thermometer or a tire pressure
Tire pressure, yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
So at just a quick glance,
Yeah, tire pressure.
Then-
Yep.
pretty sneaky. These are all just different, I don't think students are going to be bringing these to school because they're a little bit more, hey, what's that? But just to show you all the different sizes and shapes and what have you that they come in. They do also make ones that look like inhalers. Yep, middle schoolers and high schoolers are allowed to carry their inhalers on them. Elementary school students have to keep them in the clinic. So keep in mind yep, just like your inhaler. So if you're seeing something that looks like an inhaler, but it looks very, very plain, and there's no prescription labels on it, that's your clue. Or if you're not quite sure, especially if someone's puffing on their inhaler, and they look kind of glazed over at some point during the day,
That one looks longer.
that's probably your sign to look into that. If you ever have a question, this is kind of, I'm gearing this also towards the faculty as well, as opposed to just parents. So if you ever have a question, feel free to contact the parents and ask them, does your child use an inhaler? So that's step one. If they say no, well, there you go. That should be enough reasonable suspicion for you to go ahead and look into their stuff and see what's going on with that. So they come in all different colors and everything. They literally have just about every color you can think of. And so these are actual inhalers, and I put them up here so you can see the difference. You see how on the tubes they have the actual prescription information, and they say, you know, what kind of medication it is. So if you see one that's kind of just plain Jane, ordinary, no markings on it or anything, and you see the little, the mouthpiece right here within it, okay. So take a little bit closer look when you're seeing these things. They're getting really, really sneaky with these things. So I basically I'm not real savvy with the whole, you know, exactly how to cite things. But I just pulled all these pictures off of Bing.com. So if any of you want to see if there's anything else out there, I mean, you can Google it, you can Bing.com it, or whatever you want to do. But all these things are out there, and they come in all different shapes and sizes, like I said. So if you ever have a question or you're not sure, something doesn't look familiar, just look into it. Because a lot of them are getting ones that contain cannabis or marijuana. And the reason that it's so easily accessible is because there are states where they're legalizing it more so than just medicinal marijuana. And so for those states, it's not illegal for them to have it, to use it, to sell it, and what have you. And so they're doing everything legal on their end to a point, you know, other than however it gets into the hands of our kids. But, you know, they're, in a sense, the majority of them who are from those states aren't necessarily doing anything wrong by selling them and doing that. But kids are getting hold of them. And so now they're inhaling marijuana as well. And some of them are actually laced with other things. I mean, I'm sure you all heard about the couple of students from a couple of the high schools just last week that ended up having to be transported to the hospital. I believe one of them contained just like a higher concentration of marijuana in it. And so that made them really, really sick. Don't quote me on this, but I think like the typical dosage you get just from most marijuana is a very low percentage, maybe in the teens to 20 percentile as far as how potent it is. But they have ones that go all the way up to 80–90%. So you can imagine the effects that they're going to have. I think one of the kids was saying, you know, right after they started using it, they felt really sick and didn't feel right. So, I mean, these things are obviously out there, and not just out there, but in our schools. For, you know, obviously, it's here. So we have to make sure that we're a little bit more vigilant and knowing what our kids are actually doing and using, rather than just assuming and hoping that they're all doing the right thing. Because I know every parent wants to say and think and hope, well, my kid won't ever do that. But they won't do that until they do, because let's be honest, there's so much peer pressure out there, and that's usually where kids end up getting in trouble, is that peer pressure. I mean, we were all kids once. We know what it's like to have peer pressure around, and at least at one point, you gave into peer pressure at some point when you were younger too, let's be honest. You know, and regardless of whether it was something that was not so big of a deal or something that was a big deal, we've all dealt with peer pressure before. We know it's out there. We know we've all given into it at some point. It's just a matter of what exactly we gave into, right? So we're all shaking our heads. That's right.
Can you smell it?
What's that?
Can you smell it?
Because of all the other stuff that they put into it, with all the flavors that they add, you're not going to necessarily smell it unless that's the only thing that's in it, other than the other little chemicals.
Is it a higher dosage of nicotine than
No,
regular cigarettes?
I'm talking about the marijuana ones,
Oh.
the cannabis ones. Mm-hmm.
So you can't smell vaping, whatever it is?
Oh, you can, because of all the flavors they put into it. So typically a dead giveaway for us, or administration, if you're going to the bathroom and it smells very fruity in there and not like what it should smell like in a bathroom, that's one of the...
We do not have fruity bathrooms here.
See, there you go. So if you ever walk in your bathroom here and it smells fruity, that's your clue that something else is going on in there, and to figure out who's in there and what they're up to.
Does it create a lot of like a foggy smoke haze, you know what I'm saying? Does it create a lot?
It can. Some students are doing what's called, I don't remember the technical term they use, but they're swallowing it so that you don't get that fog or that haze. So that if a teacher walks into the bathroom, they don't have that big clue saying, hey, we're vaping in here. They'll swallow it.
Oh.
Yep.
So we're driving down the road, see a car next door, and they just going at it, smokes everywhere. So
Yep.
that, I was shocked to know that they could swallow like that because it's a lot of smoke.
They
Right.
used to swallow cigarette smoke too, right?
I think so. I mean, I never smoked cigarettes, so I don't know.
So that
I know
coffee-
people used to do a lot of tricks with it.
Yeah.
A lot of nose or something, but their eyes, my uncle did the eye thing, it was weird. Yeah. So I can only imagine what else. Are they doing that too? Are they like making it, don't turn the camera on this. Are they making it like blow out other places like cigarettes too? Okay, so yeah, yes. Thank you.
So that's the only visible sign from the eyes?
What's that?
That if you
No.
see-
That's
Oh,
just,
okay.
that's a trick
Oh.
that they learn that they think is cool. So they're like, hey, watch this cool thing, and they puff it, and they somehow get the smoke to come out of their eye, because everything's pretty much connected. Or they can get it to come out of their nose.
You can't detect like someone like me who's not, not familiar what to look for. You can't see their eyes are bloodshot or anything.
So
like that.
typically when you look at bloodshot eyes or the glazed look, that's when they've been doing some other type of substance, like marijuana, or if it's laced with something else. Nicotine, no, not usually. I mean, how often have you seen people walking around smoking? I mean, have they looked glazed over? No, they just have the smoker's cough going on and the husky kind of voice and some other signs, right?
So there's no difference in their pallor or anything like that. You can't really detect it. It's hard.
Not really. I mean, the biggest thing is the fruity smell in the bathroom, because that's usually where they end up going, or under bleachers, or, the typical places that you would think would be the hangout spots.
What happens to those students who are caught?
They get cited for it. So the school will do something on their end. I know you guys all have your own policies as far as what actually happens, whether it's a so many days suspension, or so the school handles it on their end, so they get ramifications from the school. And then on our end, we will give them a civil citation for the nicotine dispensing device.
That remains on the record?
It depends. Because of the way that the state attorney's office does it, they get it written up for them. And the way it works is they have to contact the state attorney's office, and they work with them, and they give them whatever stipulations they're going to give them. And they have to complete everything they give them. And so typically if they fail to do something, or they don't complete the program, then it goes on their record. So it's kind of like we're going to give you a chance to make this right, do the right thing. And if they get so many citations within a certain amount of time, it becomes, that next one becomes an arrest. Does that answer your question? Okay. Any other questions?
Do you have a big problem here?
We have had some students who have had to research what vaping is, what a Juul is, because we've had some see something, say something, that not necessarily was it happening here on the school campus, but that there's been an awareness of particular students who have been vaping, using Juuls. So when we were alerted to that, and again, not even happening on campus, we were concerned about the students. And we asked that they do research to see, was there anything already in, on the internet that says what are the dangers of this? And just as Officer Olson had talked about, there's very little other than there's not a lot of long-term research that is conclusive. So we need to recognize that it's very concentrated. And that's what all their research came back. It's so concentrated, so much more dangerous in essence than the cigarette smoking of the past.
Well, because you think about it, a lot of the stuff that you're hearing of the positives for vaping is coming from where? The marketers,
Right.
the ones who are doing the advertising to sell it. And so while while some of the stuff they're saying is true, it reduces like the yellowing of the teeth or, what have you, or the bad breath and all that, because they're putting all the other stuff in it to make it smell nice and fruity. Obviously, they're not going to harp on all the negative stuff because they're trying to sell it to you, not turn you away from it. And so you kind of have to look at all the research that's out there, both with what the marketers are saying as far as pros of going towards it, and a lot of their pros are based off of that versus cigarettes. Okay, so it's not so much saying that there's no effects that are going to happen. They're saying, oh, look at how much better this is for you than cigarettes. So that's kind of like their big push, it feels like. But there's becoming more and more research out there, more and more information out there on them as far as what they're noticing. Because again, until the problems start coming and compounding, they're not going to have any information on it. Because you think about it, how long does somebody have to smoke before they get lung cancer? It's a while, right? I mean, there's no set amount on it because every person's different and every person's body handles things differently. So while person A and person B might smoke the same amount of years, person A gets lung cancer and person B doesn't. I mean, there's lots of different factors that go into that, but it happens. But just about everybody's lungs from smoking, not just about everybody's lungs, from smoking cigarettes are going to get that nasty black tar buildup inside, right? So, but that's an over time thing because your body is built to start excreting any bad stuff, but when it builds up to a level where it can't get rid of it faster than you're putting it into your body is when it starts building up. And so it's a matter of I guess, waiting for the buildup to take place before we see what kind of damage it's actually doing. Does that make sense?
I can't understand. I know that if you buy a cigarette, when you run out of pack, you go buy another one.
Right.
The Juul or whatever that is.
You buy more pods.
What do you do? Oh, it's like a little thing.
For Juuls, they have pods. Or for some of the other ones, like I showed you with the little bottle, it's like an oil
So
that
you
they...
buy a whole stick of it again. It's a pod.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
it runs out like a liquid.
Yep, let me see. I think I had pictures somewhere. Okay, so this is the Juul device, this is the charger, and these are the pods, right here. Okay, so the pods are small, and this is, expanded, so it's not, the right exact shape and size. But, so these are the pods, and I want to say this end is the cap. So this end will plug into the device. See the little things on the end for the operation of it? And then these are the caps that come off. And when you remove the caps, there's like these clear, like a clear box that the liquid's inside. And most of the liquids, they're not clear, the liquid itself. So the liquid will be more of like a yellowish to brownish. Have you seen any other colors in them? No? I know you see them. Does that answer your question?
Sample.
What's that? I don't have any samples, I'm sorry, I don't do that.
I've seen those on the ground in parking lots crushed,
Yep,
at least a cigarette. But we'll eventually get away, that's even worse.
right, yeah. And I mean, who wants to get caught with them in their car, right?
Right.
So,
I guess they're not recyclable either, probably.
no, I mean, the pods themselves, I don't think so. I don't know if the caps are.
That you said, at least they're not in their car. That's one aspect that I know a lot of kids don't think about. But if you don't know who your friends really are, and you get pulled over, and they don't want to get caught, guess where that's going? On the floor of your car. And guess who's
Right.
in trouble?
You.
are. And
Yep.
you got to prove that that's not yours.
Yep.
I mean,
Very
kids
much.
don't think about that kind of stuff.
No, I don't.
That's a lawyer, that's a hefty lawyer.
I don't know what they cost. Hopefully I never find out.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, so that's what the pods look like, to answer your question. Okay. So again, all different shapes and sizes, and so that's the Juul style. Some of them had the little bottle that you refill it with.
And you can buy it where? Those specific stores, or you go to gas stations?
They're mostly
and buy it?
buying them offline, we've noticed, or some of them will get, excuse me, Some of them will get them from, they're selling them everywhere. So gas stations, I think, have them, convenience stores. There's stores specifically for those. Like there's some at the mall, there's some just around, and maybe after this you'll start noticing them. You know, they're usually called like vape something, or vaporize, or foggy something.
I'll have to look for it then.
Okay, yeah, so as you're driving now, you're like, oh, there's one, there's another one. They're everywhere. So yeah, I mean, mostly what we've heard is they're getting them from a friend who's 18, or, you know, an 18-year-old's getting them, and then either sharing, because, you know, we've had kids sharing some, or one of them will use it, and then give it to the next one, and they go use it, and so it's, yeah, there's that whole fiasco too.
And meningitis,
What's that?
meningitis from sharing.
Maybe. That's not a law enforcement thing, though. It's a medical thing,
Isn't
so I
that-
don't know, maybe.
No one thinks of things.
Probably, but yeah, nobody thinks about all the other stuff they're passing around along with
Oh, my God.
that. So yes, there's that too. Or they sell it to somebody, you know, because they're allowed to get it. They buy them, they sell it. It's a quick buck or whatever for them. So yeah, all those things. Anybody else? No? Did I touch on everything? Okay.
Thank you, Deputy Olson, for being with us tonight. And just a couple reminders for parents. There are on your agenda, there are the upcoming dates. For those of you watching us virtually, you know we have a calendar on the Clark website, and you can see the dates for the remainder of this year for lots of the coming events. We would hope to see a lot of you back here on February 21st, when we'll have some of our colleagues from Indian River State College to talk about different college pathways, financial aid, and all the programs that Indian River State College offers, as well as other educational institutes here and abroad. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, for those of you who were with us. And again, we thank you, Deputy Olson, for being with us. And parents here, if you want to stay for a few moments, we'll turn the cameras off, and if we have anything else to say, we'll join in that. Have a great weekend, everybody out in virtual land.